Welcome back and Happy New Year. Today is the last day of 2021 and it has been a crazy and great year. I just wanted to take a quick second to say thank you all so much for following me along on this channel, for supporting my business, for sharing your creations on social media from things that you've made from our different patterns. It really, really makes me happy to see what people are able to do with their own imaginations. So today when we get started, we're going to be sewing the Petal Shrug from the Gala pattern. And as you can see, I decided to make it for Ellowyne Wild. So this is what she's wearing tonight for her New Year's celebration. And I just wanted to quickly wish you a very, very happy and healthy 2022. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so here's what we've got for the Petal Shrug from the new Gala pattern that I just recently put out. And since I had a request from one of my customers to actually show you the construction, I'm going to do that today. And it shouldn't take very long because it's a really, really easy shrug. And I think the result is really dramatic and great. So the first thing you want to identify is that when you get that pattern, you're going to get those pieces in two separate pieces because of the length of the actual pattern piece. So you're going to look at the pattern and identify where you need to attach that together with some tape before you actually cut the pattern. So there's some arrows there and a little notch to indicate where they go together. Once you have it put together, you're going to just cut two pieces on the fold, one for the front and one for the contrast, or you could make it out of the same material if you chose. Since the next time I put out the pattern, I've had several requests for different dolls. I think I will probably do it for Jean Marshall. I'm not 100% sure, but I think I will. So I'm going to use this beautiful sort of ivory silk, and also for the contrast, I'm going to use sort of this sea foam green, and I think it will be okay. The only other thing you need is a hook and eye or a snap, depending on how you want it to close, as well as the elastic to run through the center. So I'm just going to go ahead and place it on my pattern piece, and you may notice that I'm using the silk with the grain of the silk actually going vertically instead of horizontally. That's just a preference of mine. You're welcome to cut the material with the selvage if that's your preference. So let's get that pinned together and we'll get this cut out, and then I'll show you how easy it is to just take all of these pieces over to the sewing machine and get that shrug made up in just a few minutes. If you stay tuned until the end of the video, I'm glad to show you this shrug in a couple of different colors, as well as with the stargazer gown pattern, which is relatively fitted through the bodice. It has a little bit of a full skirt, but it really makes a nice top since the top of that particular dress is relatively simple. So stay with me till the end of the video and I'll show you it with a couple of different styles. So once we have our piece attached to the fabric, we're just going to go ahead and cut that out, and then we'll go on to the sewing machine for the next step. All right, now that we have the petals all cut out and we have them pinned right side together, we're actually just going to sew all the way around every single petal, leaving an opening at both sides. So that's where we're going to actually run the elastic casing and also run the elastic through. All right, so we have the top edge done, and now we're going to repeat that same thing on the bottom edge. All right, now that we have the petals all sewn together, what you want to do is before you do anything else, you want to check the points where they're going to be coming together here and make sure that you have a good seam on both sides. Now, one thing I did when I sewed it together is I decreased my stitch length to a 2, and that's because this ivory colored fabric that I'm using has a pretty loose weave, and I don't want to pull through the material as I'm turning the shrug right side out. So the second thing I did is, as I've looked at and made sure the seams were correct, I added a little fray check just at the point where the elastic is going to run through, because this is actually a lot of material to turn through just this center casing once we get it established. So I'm going to very carefully take my scissors, I'm going to trim the seams just a little bit, not too much because of the loose weave, and then I'm going to turn the whole thing right side out, and then I'm going to get all the petals pressed before I actually form the casing. Now that you've checked all your petals and you've trimmed in towards that seam allowance and you've been really careful not to create any problems at the points, you're just going to go ahead and turn it right side out. And the way that I do this is I use a fast turn tube turner and a doll stand. So all I'm going to do is fish it in through one side, since there is an opening at both edges, and I'm going to just push it almost through to the actual opposite side, and then I'm going to catch it with that doll stand right in the circular portion of this tube turner. So I'm just going through the center, and that's actually where the casing is also going to go for the elastic once we get the petals turned. So once you get to the opposite side. Now at this stage, I would recommend that you be really careful and just take as much time as necessary so that you don't pull through the fabric. So there's the end, but I'm not going to go quite to the end, and I'm going to go to the side of the fabric that's a little bit less loose weaved, and I'm just going to stick the doll stand right in the end so you can see that I've got a little point to start. And very carefully, I'm just going to thread this through. So I want to make sure I take enough time so that I'm not creating a lot of bulk. So, and I'm going to continue that all the way through to the other side. Once you've got the shrug turned right side out, you're going to go in with that implement or whatever you're using to turn it with. In this case, I'm using a doll stand, and I'm just going to fish it back through that same hole and find each point of the petal. So I want to be really careful, but I want to make sure I don't push again through the material. And I would recommend, if you're making this for the first time, that you use something that doesn't have a very loose weave, because it does make it a lot harder to turn it without pulling through on the seams. So we're going to repeat that with all 8 points on each side, and then we'll get a press. Once you have all the petals pressed, what you're going to do now is you're just going to fold it in half. And the reason you're doing this is you want to kind of find the center of the petals so that you have a guide when you're actually going to put in the casing for the elastic. So you're just going to flip the petals in half and actually just do a press line all around, all across that edge in order to have that guide. So you're just going to unfold that, and then you're going to run your stitch on either side of that enough that you have room to put in a 1/4 inch elastic. So I'm going to make it a little bit bigger than a 1/4 inch for the casing, and I want to make sure that it's going from one end to the other. Now that we have the casing sewn in place, we're just going to grab some 1/4 inch elastic, which I have here, and I'm going to actually just string it through. Now, the way that I like to do this, and there's obviously several different ways, is I like to use a bobby pin, the kind with the little bit of plastic over the end so that it's protected, like this. So that way it won't snag any of the seams or pull through my fabric. So I just take my scissors and I cut a little, fold it in half and cut a little bit of a hole in it to put the bobby pin through. And that's what I use to actually string it. Once we have the elastic run through the shrug, we're actually just going to get a quick fit to the shoulders of the doll that we're sewing for so that we make sure that the elastic is the right tension. And this is the shrug that I made for the last pattern. So as you can see, these are very similar in size. So I imagine that's going to be just fine. This was the doll that we used for that. Obviously the dress doesn't match, but we can go ahead and just check the fit around the front. So I'm just going to pull just a little bit more, and then I'm going to secure the elastic off at each edge. So I'm taking my flat and I'm just pushing in the raw edge of the shrug on the inside and the outside. And I'm also holding that elastic so it doesn't escape back into it. And now I'm just going to catch it with a few stitches to make sure. And then I'm going to pull it out and cut it off so you can't see it anymore. Then I'm actually going to add a snap in place. And that's going to be to close one side of the shrug. Well, the addition of the snaps and finishing that raw edge opening completes the construction of the shrug from the Gala pattern. I hope you guys enjoyed this video today. If you did, please hit that subscribe button and give me a thumbs up. And stay with me until the end of the video, and I'll show you this actual shrug design on a couple of different fashion dolls in a couple of different colors. All right, so that concludes yet another and the final sewing tutorial for 2021. I really thank you once again for your continued support. If you're interested in this content, as always, I encourage you to subscribe and share this video with your friends. And I look forward to seeing you in this healthy and happy 2022. I'll see you in the next video.